Have you ever been in a room full of people and still felt invisible? Like everyone else got the invitation to belong, but somehow you didn't. Today, I want to tell you the story of a child almost all of us were at some point. The one who stood on the sidelines, wondering, why not me? Because this story isn't just about childhood. It's about how that moment can shape an entire life. Here's the truth most people don't know. Human beings are wired for belonging. The same way we are wired for food, water, and shelter. Neuroscientists have discovered that social rejection activates the same areas of the brain as physical pain. That means your brain processes exclusion, almost like being physically hurt. So when someone laughs at you, or ignores you, or leaves you out, your brain reacts as if you were injured. That's why words can bruise. That's why silence can feel like a punch. And for a child, whose brain is still learning what the world means, these experiences cut even deeper, because they don't just feel rejected, they start believing they are the problem. Not, they didn't include me, but I am not someone worth including. And that belief quietly shapes everything that comes after. To really understand why this hurts so much, we have to go back thousands of years. For most of human history, being alone wasn't just lonely, it was deadly. Survival depended on the group. Food, protection, shelter all came from belonging. So the human nervous system evolved. With a powerful warning signal, exclusion equals danger. Even today, when our physical survival doesn't depend on a tribe, our brains still react as if it does. So the excluded child doesn't just feel sad. Their body floods with stress hormones. Their brain becomes hyper-alert. They start scanning for signs of rejection. Every look, every laugh, every whisper, and slowly a pattern forms. They stop raising their hand. They stop starting conversations. They stop being themselves. Not because they don't want connection, but because they're trying to protect themselves from getting hurt again. Now here's the part that most people don't realize. The playground doesn't disappear when we grow up. It just changes shape. The classroom becomes the workplace. The lunch table becomes social circles. The schoolyard becomes society. And unless something breaks the cycle, the invisible wall stays with us. You might succeed. You might be surrounded by people. You might even look confident. But inside, a small voice still whispers, what if they leave? What if I don't really belong? And here's the cruel irony. That fear of rejection can actually create behaviors that make connection harder. You become overly cautious, or too quiet, or emotionally distant, or cling too tightly, not because you don't want closeness, but because you're afraid to lose it. So the pain of exclusion becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But this story isn't only about the ones left out. It's also about the ones doing the excluding. Children learn very early who has power in a group. And sometimes exclusion isn't even intentional cruelty. Sometimes it's about testing status, strengthening identity, saying, we are us and you are not. Psychologists call this in-group and out-group behavior, and it doesn't stop in childhood. It appears in offices, politics, cultures, nations. We crave belonging so much that sometimes we exclude others just to feel secure ourselves. So while one child is learning, I am not enough, another child is learning, I stay safe by staying inside the group. Both are shaped, both are affected, and both carry those lessons into adulthood. Here's where it becomes truly dangerous. Over time, exclusion stops being an event and becomes an identity. The child doesn't think, they were unkind. They think, I am unworthy. And once that belief forms, it guides every choice. Years later, that same person may hesitate to apply for opportunities, share their ideas, enter relationships, show their creativity, not because they lack ability, but because deep down, they still believe they don't belong. One playground moment can quietly shape an entire lifetime of hesitation. And yet, here's the paradox. Many of the world's most creative, compassionate, and insightful people were once excluded children. Why? because being on the outside gives you a different view of the world. You observe more, you notice patterns, you understand emotions more deeply. Pain, when processed, becomes perception. This doesn't mean exclusion is good. It leaves scars, always, but sometimes those scars become maps, guiding people to understand humanity in ways others never had to. That's why so many artists, writers, healers, and leaders come from backgrounds of loneliness. They didn't just survive the outside, they learned from it. Another truth we rarely talk about: children don't just learn exclusion from other kids, they also learn it from adults. A teacher who only praises loud students, a parent too busy or emotionally unavailable, families that reward only certain personalities. Even without bad intentions, children can feel invisible at home, and that hurts even more because home is supposed to mean unconditional belonging. Studies in developmental psychology show that children who feel emotionally unseen are more likely to struggle with anxiety, depression, trust issues, fear of intimacy, not because of one moment, but because of repeated emotional patterns. The brain learns through repetition, and if the pattern is, "I don't matter," that belief becomes deeply wired. But here's the hopeful part. The brain is not fixed. Identity is not permanent. Old beliefs can be rewritten. Neuroscience shows that new relationships, new experiences, and new self-understanding can literally rewire emotional responses. The excluded child inside us can learn new lessons. They can learn that rejection was never proof of unworthiness. It was proof of human fear, social limitations, and imperfect groups. And here's something powerful. Almost every human being at some point has felt excluded, which means that invisible wall we imagine between me and everyone else is often an illusion. Most people are carrying their own version of that same wound. So what happens when we remember this? When we stop seeing loneliness as weakness and start seeing it as shared human experience, something powerful changes. We start noticing the quiet person, the one no one invites, the one who always listens but rarely speaks. And we realize sometimes all it takes to change someone's entire day or even their life is a moment of recognition, a contact, a genuine question, an invitation. To the group, it feels small. To the excluded child, it feels like sunlight breaking through a storm. Research actually confirms this. Studies show that when teachers write encouraging notes, students not only perform better academically, they feel more confident and connected. Workplaces with inclusive cultures show higher creativity, stronger teamwork, lower burnout. Inclusion is not just kindness. It is power. It unlocks human potential. Some thinkers say exclusion is unavoidable, that whenever humans form groups, someone will always be left out. Maybe that's partly true, but inevitability is not the same as destiny. We may not erase exclusion completely, but we can change how often it happens and how deeply it wounds. We can stop treating belonging as something to be earned and start treating it as something to be offered. The excluded child becomes a teacher, teaching empathy, awareness, and humanity. And many of us are still carrying that child inside. Many of us grow up physically, but emotionally, a part of us is still standing on that playground, still waiting, still watching, still wondering if we are finally allowed to belong. Psychologists often call this the inner child, the emotional memory of who we were when our beliefs about ourselves were formed. And when that child experienced exclusion, those feelings don't disappear with age. They show up quietly in adulthood, in the way you hesitate before sharing your opinion, in the way you apologize for taking up space, in the way you doubt whether people really want you around. Healing doesn't begin by pretending those feelings aren't there. Healing begins when we finally acknowledge them, when we stop saying, "It wasn't a big deal," and start saying, "That really hurt." Because pain that is ignored does not disappear. It simply finds new ways to speak. But pain that is understood can finally begin to loosen its grip. One of the most powerful shifts a person can make is separating their identity from their experience. You were excluded, but you are not exclusion itself. You were overlooked, but you are not invisible. Psychology shows that when people reframe past experiences, not as personal failure, but as common human struggle, their emotional wounds begin to heal. Instead of saying, "I wasn't chosen because I wasn't good enough," the story becomes, "I wasn't chosen because people are imperfect, afraid, and often unaware." That shift may seem small, but it changes everything. Because when meaning changes, behavior changes. And when behavior changes, life begins to change too. There's a powerful concept in psychology called post-traumatic growth. It means that after hardship, some people don't just recover, they actually grow stronger in certain ways. They develop deeper empathy, stronger emotional awareness, clearer purpose. The excluded child who heals often becomes the adult who notices the lonely coworker, who checks on the quiet friend, who creates safe spaces for others. It's as if the wound becomes a doorway into compassion, into understanding, into leadership, not because the pain was good, but because the person refused to let the pain be wasted. Still, we must be honest about something. Exclusion is not beautiful. It is not character building. It is not harmless. It affects academic performance, mental health, confidence, relationships. Excluded children are more likely to withdraw, to fear participation, to doubt themselves long into adulthood. And loneliness is not just emotional, it is biological. Research shows that chronic loneliness increases inflammation, weakens the immune system, and even shortens life expectancy. So that moment on the playground was never just a small moment. It was a seed, and seeds grow. That's why awareness matters. That's why kindness matters. That's why small moments matter more than we think. Now here's the beautiful part of this story. If exclusion can shape a life in painful ways, then inclusion can shape it in healing ways. A single invitation, a single word of encouragement, a single person who says, "Come sit with us." To adults, it feels minor. To a child, it can feel life-changing because it sends a powerful message. You matter. You belong. You are seen. And when a child believes that, their entire sense of self begins to shift. Confidence grows. Curiosity grows. Courage grows. The invisible wall begins to disappear. Still, let's be real. Exclusion leaves echoes. In the hesitation before speaking. In the fear of being judged. In the habit of shrinking dreams before anyone else can reject them. These echoes are subtle, but they are powerful. And yet, they are not permanent. Every time you challenge them, every time you show up anyway, you are rewriting your story. Not all at once, but slowly, bravely, honestly. So let's zoom out for a moment. What kind of world are we creating? When we treat belonging like a competition, when attention goes only to the loudest voices, the most confident, the most popular, how many quiet talents are we losing? How many gentle minds are being overlooked? How much beauty never gets expressed? Inclusion is not about being nice. It is about unlocking what humanity could be. Every unheard voice is a lost possibility. And now, before we end, I want to speak directly to that child inside you. The one who once wondered, why don't they choose me? Here is what you deserve to hear then, and deserve to hear now. You were never broken. You were never invisible. You were never too much or not enough. You belonged even when others couldn't see it. Your worth was never decided by a group of children, a classroom, a workplace, or a moment in time. It was always yours. So where does this leave us? It leaves us with awareness. And awareness gives us choice. To notice who feels unseen. To question the invisible walls we maintain. to ask, what small act of inclusion can I offer today? Because somewhere near you right now, there is someone standing on the sidelines. And your kindness might be the moment their story begins to change. The excluded child is not a symbol of weakness. They are a reminder of what it means to be human. We all want to belong. We all want to matter. We all want to be seen. And when we remember that, we stop building walls and start building bridges. So if this story touched something in you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because sometimes, the simplest words can change a life. You belong. And maybe in saying it to others, we finally learn to believe it ourselves.